Are you looking for the best PC motherboards? In this video, we will look at some of the best 5 PC motherboards on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description. So make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Number 1. Asus ROG Strix Z790, a gaming Wi-Fi 2. According to Asus, its ROG Strix Z790, a gaming Wi-Fi 2 motherboard serves Z790 refresh customers a balance of style, performance, cooling, and connectivity. The board features black and silver styling that's only slightly changed from the original Z790, a gaming Wi-Fi, but steps up its game with native 14th Gen Intel and Wi-Fi 7 support, 5 M.2 sockets, increased memory speeds, a robust power solution, and a DIY-friendly design, as well as AI overclocking and AI cooling 2 features from Asus. It's not inexpensive at $359.99, but it's a tempting platform in the mid-range category. The ROG Strix Z790, a gaming Wi-Fi 2, features a black multi-layer PCB with silver heatsinks and shrouds covering the hotspots. The left VRM heatsink is decorated with a frosted ROG symbol lit from below by RGB LEDs. The VRM heatsink is large and heavy and keeps the power delivery bits running within spec. Overall, it's an attractive-looking board, only moderately flashy but no duller than its direct competitors. While the RGB implementation may not make your chassis the center of attention, it does brighten things up to show off the contrasting style of the board inside. Number 2. ASRock X670E Taichi. Like with most new hardware generations, the flashy high-end products get launched first, and then their vanguard designs are trimmed down into the mainstream and lower budget parts. With the new AM5 socket from AMD, which launched with its Ryzen 7000 desktop processors, ASRock went big literally, making its X670E Taichi $499.99, an extended ATX, EATX whopper of a motherboard with a big price to match. The Carrara version of the Taichi, with its special white marble styling, might be the flagship ASRock AM5 board of the moment, but the two share the same hardware. AMD's new AM5 socket, with the help of its counterpart X670 and B650 chipsets, brings a host of changes and new features over AM4. For a more detailed breakdown, you can read our coverage piece here. The short version is as follows. The physical changes are the most obvious ones. AM5 moves from the pin grid array, PGA chips to a land grid array, LGA. This moves the CPU connection pins from the CPU area to the motherboard socket, where they're better protected from getting bent or damaged. AMD has also substantially increased the amount of power that can be delivered to the CPU, officially supporting a 170-watt thermal design power, TDP. Along with the higher TDP, AMD has updated its CPU power delivery system to what it calls Scalable Voltage Interface 3, allowing the CPU and power delivery system to communicate more efficiently. In practical terms, this means the CPU can throttle up and down more quickly in response to changes in available power and thermal sealing. Number 3. Asus ROG Strix B760 F Gaming Wi-Fi. The ROG Strix B760 F Gaming Wi-Fi starts from a matte black 6-layer PCB with mostly black heatsinks covering the power delivery, chipset, and M.2 sockets. The heatsinks feature a brushed aluminum finish, with the voltage modules, VRMs, using deep miter cuts to increase surface area and effectiveness. The same heatsinks also have Asus ROG branding, which is most prominently featured on the left VRM bank with an RGB backlit ROG symbol. Overall, it's an attractive board that would look slick in most themed builds. This B760F board supports Intel's 12th and 13th generation LGA 1700 processors, including the flagship Intel Core i9-13900K and its KS variant. The 1660-amp MOSFETs dedicated to the processor handled my CPU without an issue during testing. The heatsinks kept the power bits underneath running well within specification. While you can't overclock the processor with this chipset, the available power is plenty for stock operation. Number 4. ASRock B650E Taichi Lite. Usually the light version of a product removes features or calories, but the ASRock B650E Taichi Lite, $299.99, loses only cosmetics. This AMD AM5 motherboard offers the same hardware configuration as its big sibling but forgoes the usual Taichi premium appearance, with 3D sculpted heatsinks and shrouds, and fancy RGB lighting, to focus on flagship-class features like robust power delivery, a premium audio solution, and a dozen USB ports on the rear I/O panel. One of those ports is even a 40 gigabits per second USB 4 Type-C port that supports video output, albeit only from a Ryzen 7000 CPU's integrated graphics. Why sacrifice the signature aesthetics? Because the light costs $70 less at MSRP than the tricked-out, full-fat B650E Taichi, and actually $90 less at Newegg at this writing. It's our editor's choice pick for AMD Ryzen 7000 builders looking for high-end features and overclocking potential at a moderate price. The savings come from ASRock's design choices. The fancy brushed aluminum semi-gloss finish and the 3D cogs and gears of the regular Taichi give way to a more mid-range appearance with a few shrouds and a more exposed PCB. The cog insignia is stenciled on the remaining heatsinks in gray. The Taichi light still sits on an 8-layer PCB, but you lose the active cooling around the VRMs. Number 5. ASRock B650 LiveMixer. Shrinking violets and windowless cases need not apply, as the colorful LiveMixer reminds me of the DFI LAN party boards back in the day. The oversized VRM heatsinks and other components sport bright orange and red hues that spill over onto the 8-layer PCB, giving off a party vibe accentuated by graffiti font LiveMixer labeling. ASRock says the creative focus is no jive, as the company tested different capture devices from Avermedia and Elgato to ensure compatibility. The PCIe 5.0 M.2 socket has a larger heatsink than the rest, which we like to see on those hot-running drives. The only reinforced PCI Express slot is the primary one, but that's the only slot likely to need the help reinforcement provides. Shrinking violets and windowless cases need not apply, as the colorful LiveMixer reminds me of the DFI LAN party boards back in the day. The oversized VRM heatsinks and other components sport bright orange and red hues that spill over onto the 8-layer PCB, giving off a party vibe accentuated by graffiti font LiveMixer labeling. ASRock says the creative focus is no jive, as the company tested different capture devices from Avermedia and Elgato to ensure compatibility. The PCIe 5.0 M.2 socket has a larger heatsink than the rest, which we like to see on those hot-running drives. The only reinforced PCI Express slot is the primary one, but that's the only slot likely to need the help reinforcement provides. The B650 LiveMixer supports AMD's Ryzen AM5 processors with 17-phase power delivery and 60A MOSFETs. The 840 amps available to the CPU, 14 phases dedicated to core, prove to be plenty to handle our Ryzen 9 7950X at both stock and overclocked speeds. The big VRM heatsinks do an excellent job of keeping power delivery running within spec. Overclocking potential is limited only by your cooling.